Hi, this is Taylor Garcia, and this is our Module 11 case study for data analysis and assessment. So, section 1 is summarizing the case and establishing the facts that we know so far. So far, Mr. Rhodes is a first year administrator at Golden Oak High School. They are having a decline in their student attendance data. So, Dr. Newman, the superintendent, met with Mr. Rhodes to address the concerns about that issue. And his number one concern, amongst a couple of other things that he wanted to fix, was the lowest attendance percentage throughout their entire district. So he is evaluating currently 5 students that have the lowest attendance within the last school year to determine their reasonings for being gone. These events happened after winter break, and Mr. Rhodes's work is happening at Golden Oak High School. So people that are concerned with the situation, Dr. Newman is the superintendent. He's concerned that the high school is not aligning with the state law that they've agreed to follow, and they're excusing absences that don't follow certain criteria. And he's also concerned that they are the lowest, or they have the lowest attendance percentage throughout their entire district. Obviously, Mr. Rhodes is involved. He's the new administrator at the high school. The students and the staff at Golden Oak High School are involved in the situation, and social services might be involved in the future if this continues to be an issue with truancy among students. So people who are involved, obviously Dr. Newton, he is concerned with their low attendance rate because lower rates of attendance are going to yield lower rates of student achievement. Mr. Rhodes, we haven't really learned through the case study how he's feeling, but just imagining being a first year administrator, it might feel like an overwhelming task to take on, because that's not necessarily something that you can control within the four walls of your building, but it is a very serious issue. And then the students and staff, many of them are absent, and they have an inexcusable reason for being absent and being gone. And then some of the staff are actually allowing students to be excused without one of those legitimate reasons that falls within the state law. So, reporting legal and ethical issues. There hasn't been physical harm, but students are potentially having that academical or academically harmed sense, because, again, in the research that they were talking about in the case study, if student achievement or if student attendance is down, student achievement is going to be down as well. And that could be obviously a very big concern for the school. It does contravene existing law. Again, that state law stating that students are excused for illness, death in the family, inclement weather, and any other valid reason that is approved by an administrator, not by a teacher, but by an administrator prior to the absence happening. And then breaching contracts. Some of the staff excusing some of their absences could be a breach of their contract, because technically it's not their responsibility to approve and excuse absences. So, synthesizing what has happened, Golden Oak High School is facing a low attendance rate that Dr. Newman, the superintendent, has asked Mr. Rhodes, the building administrator, to address and work towards correcting. So, again, the people involved: Dr. Newman is the superintendent, Mr. Rhodes is the Golden Oak High School administrator, the staff and the students at the building, and then social services could be involved. This high school is in a suburban area. It is a public high school serving grades 9 through 12. So they cover all subjects. There's 965 students that they serve, with 11 athletic programs and 31 opportunities for clubs and other extracurricular activities for students. So, prioritizing some of our information. Yes, this conflict could be damaging to stakeholders, because, again, that low student attendance data is going to yield a low student achievement rate. Um, and individuals that have a stake in the outcome: Dr. Newman, he's held responsible for the district as the superintendent. Mr. Rhodes is held responsible as the building of Golden Oak High School. And then the staff is held responsible for the student achievement data. And then the students and their families can be affected by them not learning or being reported through social services through concerns of truancy. I don't think that all relevant stakeholders have been consulted yet. So, Mr. Rhodes was instructed, or it was suggested to him that he needs to generate a plan with social services and juvenile court to help correct some of these um, low attending students. And again, this coming from Dr. Newman, it shall probably be followed through or used at some point in the future by Mr. Rhodes because that was a request of the superintendent. So I feel like by not doing that, it's almost kind of dismissing his expertise, and he's obviously in this leadership role for a reason. I do think that there's more that I could learn about the situation. I always like to know all the details. I would want to know what staff and teachers are allowed to excuse because, from my understanding in the case study, it should only be administrators, not teachers. What are the attendance numbers? What does that data look like from year to year? And what has the trend been over the last 5 years, maybe? And then, are some of the students with the lower attendance rate, are some of those absences for excusable reasons like illness or death in the family, or a valid reason that's been approved by an administrator? I would like to know how many of those absences are approved. And then looking forward, even though there's more that I want to know, I do think that I know enough about the situation to make a decision. Um, there's always more that I would want to know, but I feel like I know enough. I can generate ideas and advocate for solutions that are going to promote that high level of student achievement and well being, which is always, I feel like, an ultimate goal of an educator in a leadership position. And then after generating my ideas, choosing the best option based on the data that will help the students moving forward. So option one would be no action. It's already said he's kind of investigated those students, but then maybe not doing much with it and just hoping that maybe years prior has just kind of been an off year and that the problem will resolve itself moving forward. Very comprehensive action would be to put an extreme policy in place. So if you're going to be gone for an illness, you need to know. The only time we're closing for weather is if it's through the district. We're not going to make that decision as a school. And I don't know what the school's policies are on that. And then death in the family, there needs to be some sort of proof that that's where you've been and that's why you've been away from school. And the only person that's allowed to excuse absences ahead of time will be him, and anything else is not excused. And then looking at those five students that he's investigated, sitting down with those families and those students and making sure that they understand this is our policy. This is what we are going to hold ourselves accountable for. This is what's going to happen moving forward if you don't comply with that. And then for intermediate action, Mr. Rhodes could review school district and state policy with all staff during their next meeting, whether that's an in-service or a staff meeting, letting them know this is why we are doing this. It's not just because I'm choosing to really care about attendance. It's because it is a law and it is our responsibility as educators to ensure that students are in school so they can learn. And then after this, hosting an informational meeting for parents and students, sharing with them, we've been a little bit lenient this first part of the year and in years past. However, because we've been so lenient, we're starting to see a decline in our student achievement. So these are, the things that are excusable for absences. And if not, it's going to be unexcusable. This is how many absences will warrant a truancy report or a letter. And if it continues to be an issue, I mean, the policy states and the law states that at that point it has to go to social services to get involved. And I think just explaining that to parents in a way that, again, is not just, I'm just choosing to really care about this issue for this semester, but this is the law, this is my responsibility, this is the policy, and this is what we're going to follow. And I'm doing all of this because I want your students to be successful. And then another option is Mr. Rhodes could seek support from those community partners like social services and juvenile court, like Dr. Newman suggested, and having them kind of plan a grade level, meet with ninth graders, 10th, 11th, and so on. And then after those seminars, working with them to implement some sort of a reward system or an acknowledgement system for students who do have exceptional attendance records. So, evaluating options, taking no action, it doesn't take a lot of work, and students and families aren't really bothered by their kids missing school. However, there's that low attendance rate, there's going to be that low student achievement rate. Mr. Rhodes at that point is not following through with what Dr. Newman has asked him to do. So that's could be considered insubordination. And student achievement rates, again, like I said, those are going to drop. So taking a very comprehensive action, a pro is that it might increase attendance rate because it's going to be a very rigid policy, and Mr. Rhodes will be the only one to excuse absences, and he can make his use of his professional judgment to do that. Some cons is that he's going to be taking a very extreme approach in the middle of a school year, so that might rub some people the wrong way, and kind of having some pushback and frustrations from that. So option three was to work with the staff and helping them understand why we're doing this and what their responsibilities are, and helping families understand this is why we're doing this is why it's important, and this is what we're doing moving forward. So sharing that why is going to encourage buy-in from staff and students and families and their support. And the staff is going to be able to review the policy and what their responsibility is and what it isn't, because it seems like from the case study that that might be unclear. And then a con is that Mr. Rhodes is still attempting change in the middle of a school year, which might cause some frustration amongst students and families and maybe even the staff. So intermediate four is working with those community partners. A pro of this is it kind of takes the heat off Mr. Rhodes, and he's kind of putting it onto an outside party. There is a praise system for positive attendance rate and good attendance rate, rather than kind of shaming those that don't have good attendance. And then Mr. Rhodes is going to be taking Dr. Newman's advice and using those community partners. A con is that students might not receive the message well if it's from an outside source that maybe the students don't know and trust as much as they do Mr. Rhodes, and they might not care about any sort of reward system. So I think that when choosing the best option, I would go with option three. So working with the staff and then working with the students and families. I feel like this is really just going to help them understand the why behind why attendance is important and how it correlates to student achievement. Um, I do think that this could be done with care for attention to everybody, because you're going to share the importance with everybody. Everybody's going to get the same message, and it's going to come from your building leader. And these stakeholders are going to be the ones that are involved, are most affected by the low student attendance rate. So the staff, the students, the families, and the administration. So at that point, I think that all stakeholders would have been consulted. And I do believe that through all four of these options, I've come up with a couple different creative ideas and chose the best one. So, step by step, what the plan would look like, you're going to meet with your staff, explain what the policy states, and explicitly state this is your responsibility. This is my responsibility. Bring it to me, and I'd be happy to help you. And letting them know that this is for all students. It doesn't matter who the student is. This is the policy. This is what we're going to follow moving forward, because we have to have consistency in that. And then planning a meeting for students and families, making sure to promote that through emails, phone calls, flyers, social media, however you get things out, and possibly doing it virtually to encourage more engagement amongst families if they can't be there. And then having the meeting with those that attend, and if the other people can attend, again, sending out like a one-page informational sheet that kind of says what was reviewed in the meeting, kind of the big key points and takeaways, and then being available to answer any questions and concerns from everybody. And also doing some sort of a follow-up afterwards with your staff and your parents to get feedback about what they thought about whatever it was that you presented. I think that it could be handled with care, so that they all understand that this is all because I want your students to be successful, and I want them to have that high level of student achievement that we strive for in our building. And again, there could be some frustrations, but if Mr. Rhodes is just able to stay focused on this is about what is best for students, and this is about policy, because people can't argue policy. It kind of is what it is, and that's what we have to follow. Then I think that he can do it in a positive way. So people that'll be involved, Mr. Rhodes, he's going to be delivering all this information. So it's all coming from one person. The superintendent could be brought in so that he knows how the issue is being handled.